Okay, it'd be great if we can start with a little bit of background, I guess, as to how the two of you, Organisation Network Plus and Datatecnics, how the collaboration came about.
But there was a mutual contact of ours, also in the utility space, who felt that there was a natural fit there. And so we were introduced. And then Kev, along with Sam Atherton, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Network Plus, came over to our office here in Salford. And, being two local Salford businesses, it was pretty straightforward to organise. But, I think what was immediately clear over the course of the couple of hours that we had was that we saw the world in a very similar way in terms of the most pressing challenges for water companies and the types of solutions that we wanted to be able to provide. So very meaningful very quickly. And then after that, I think it was just a case of trying to get both of us joined up in a slightly more structured manner, if that's fair, Kev.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My previous role was at United Utilities, and I'd become aware of Datatecnics during my time there. So we saw the potential of some of the technology in particular, and how that may sort of support a business like Network Plus. So we've been keen to foster that relationship really, and the partnership, particularly from an AI point of view and an operational technology perspective. We work along a lot of client assets every single day. We dig thousands of holes per week, or tens of thousands even, across the UK. So I think the opportunity to integrate some of that technology and learning through some of the platforms that Datatecnics have is quite a powerful combination. And from our point of view, it could be quite sort of interesting from an industry perspective. So early days, but lots of potential, I would suggest.
Okay, and I guess at the high level, before we drill down into the actual sort of practicalities of what it is you're working on, the high level, you're sort of both major focus, if not the only focus, is delivering sort of better performance and efficiency and also improve sustainability for the water company. So I don't know if either or both of you want to just say a little bit about those sort of objectives.
Yeah, I think if I kick off, I think look, the opportunity within the sector has never been greater. There's a lot of investment in UK infrastructure, and I guess a lot of particularly from a water point of view, there's deemed to be a monopoly sort of position from the water companies. So cost efficiency, customer service is really vital for water companies. Obviously, that's heavily regulated and penalised or incentivised accordingly. From a supply chain point of view, there's a big opportunity for us to help water companies and broader utility companies to minimise the impact on consumers, and bill payers, and that is by identifying issues before they become a problem, so that you're almost offering a silent service. That makes you more efficient as well, because if you're proactively responding as opposed to reactively responding on a 24/7 basis, then that does make the operation that you deliver to your customers more effective and efficient, and it minimises any customer disruption. I think the traditional way of operating in this space is customer has an issue, they contact the water company in this instance, they contact us as contractors, we go out, we fix the problem. But actually what this does is turn it on its head to proactively prevent the issue from occurring in the first place and maintain on a much more proactive basis. That isn't something that's particularly new, and it's certainly not new in other sectors, but from a utility point of view, you've got to think the asset is so vast, it's largely underground, so it's very difficult to get to. Some of the asset base will not be known in terms of where it is and the conditions it's in. So if you can get that sort of technology operational on your assets, plus use AI then to predict where failure might occur, you're offering a better service at a lower cost. I guess, Suhayl, if you give your perspective, it'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Kev. It's exactly all of those things, because really at the end of the day, I think water utilities want to provide more than anything else as good and as reliable a service for water consumers as they possibly can. And that, at least part of that equation, means if you can get ahead of the problems before they emerge, then that's really powerful. And taking one of the tools that we've got in the Datatecnics technology portfolio, which is called Failure Indicator. What we're trying to do there is to get water companies to think about the most efficient way or the most targeted way of conducting their pipe replacement programs. So what that means is knowing and accepting that there is somewhere between a 0.1 and a 0.5% average replacement rate in the UK, and saying that you can either spend that purely by which pipe sections fail most frequently in a reactive manner, or you can use artificial intelligence to predict where the greatest benefit would likely be by swapping out specific sections of pipe. And when we've done that, we've seen predictions that are made on those assets for a return on investment of up to 15 times, which is enormous. In other words, saying that for, let's say, a 0.1% replacement rate, you would get a 1.5% reduction in service interruption. And that's, I think Kev, what Kev's really alluding to there is that's the type of value that the customer may not necessarily even know about because it's predictive, but you're getting ahead of the problem. And that's what's really necessary in this AMP, I think.
Okay, so actually in practice, what's happened, as I understand it, Network Plus, you're going to be using Datatecnics sensing technology, and that's to provide utility clients with pipeline monitoring. So I suppose it'd be good to understand what that solution looks like, and then we can I'll follow up and ask how it works, etc. But first, can we start with, what does the actual solution look like?
Maybe if I kick us off, Kevin, then you can build on
Yes.
that, right? So, I mean, from a tech perspective, one of the things that's so interesting for Datatecnics is that we do not have proficiency, nor do we want to be getting into holes and conducting R&M jobs and, necessarily even installing kit on pipe because of the challenges that are associated with that. And sometimes, especially if there's a dedicated dig required for some of our solutions, then that obviously has a cost to the water utilities in doing that as well. So there are two objectives here, right? Like one is trying to get as much high quality data on the pipeline infrastructure that exists. And then the second is making access to that data as easy as possible and as cost efficient as possible for the customer. Both of those things are really important. So practically, what we're doing with Network Plus is we're deploying and working with them to help customers install what's called leak response. So what leak response does is essentially it reduces the time to find and fix leaks. And the way that it does that is it takes all of the data that exists already inside of a water company, from flow meters and pressure monitors, even hydraulic models, along with asset data. And once it ingests that, it takes the DMA and it categorizes or clusters the DMA into smaller components to say, actually, here's the hotspot for leakage, and here and here and here. And then, the on-ground leakage technicians can go and investigate that. Working with Network Plus, what it enables us to do is it tightens that handover from leakage detection to repair, because there's a lot of sort of inefficiency when you're using either manual paper-based approaches or having to physically go back to a central office to try and get that logged in a work order management system. So that's really effective. And then I think the other component of this that's really interesting as well is, as part of leak response, we're about to work together and hopefully deliver to many customers this ability to have permanent leakage monitoring systems. And what that would mean is leak response would be able to do a lot of the work on its own using that permanently installed sensor base to narrow down which sections of pipe are more likely to be leaking. So it's sort of taking the core version, if you like, and supercharging that with even higher quality predictions by actually getting higher quality data measurements. So that's a little bit about what we do on the leakage side. We're also doing some work on the burst prediction side as well. But maybe I'll stop there, and Kev, you can add anything to that.
I think you've summed it up very well. But obviously you're the guys behind the technology, aren't you? So I think from a context of the partnership, and I guess Phil, what's driving this, I guess Datatecnics provides both the sensors and the system that does the AI and all the clever thinking around predicting failure and where we need to be. I guess where Network Plus come into it, we've got scale. We operate with a lot of utility companies. We, from a logistics point of view, we dig literally tens of thousands of excavations per week, so we get access to the apparatus, at that point, you can either install, if you're installing new pipe, if you're replacing old for new, at that stage again, you can install sensoring, and that will give you a good idea around various different metrics in terms of what's happening within the pipe. Is it the right pressure? Is there potential leakage as a result of that? And I guess the technology coupled with the access to the apparatus, which is largely, underground, is quite a powerful combination. You need to be able to deploy, the technologies of the asset to get the information back into the system to use the AI. Without the access there is quite difficult.
Yeah, and I just it's the final point I'd make to that, as well as I think, as Kev was alluding to, you have this amazing opportunity when the holes are already open to resolve one of our industry's biggest challenges, which is data quality. And that's a key part of this relationship. It's making the most out of the opportunities that we get every single day to get better quality data on our infrastructure by deploying sensors to tell us what's going on below ground.
Okay, and I mean, I was going to ask how it works. I think you've both between you pretty much explained that, but I guess it would be good to understand the ways in which obviously you've explained that if someone's dug up a pipe, then that's the perfect opportunity. But will there also be potentially people digging up perfectly decent pipes to install the sensors? And then how quickly is the data? Is it real time, sort of live data, or is there some kind of delay? Just, yeah, if you could perhaps explain the process of how and when the sensors are installed, how the data is obtained and then fed back, and how quickly it can be turned into information, actionable information, if you like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'll take this, considering that it's our tech stack. So, well, what we'll do is we'll ingest the data that already exists from a water company as standard, because it's really important that you make the most out of the existing data. That is a key part of the process. But in addition to that, where we can and where necessary, we enhance that data through the deployment of sensors together. And that gives us the sort of data to go on to the next stage of the process, which is modeling that for very specific outcomes, i.e. leakage prediction or burst prediction. So if you take all of that, you've essentially just described the Datatecnics platform, which is called Foresight. And Foresight, in the manner that I've just described, is a data ingestion platform, either from in-field sensors or from the existing data that exists within a water company. And on top of this data layer, we have the application layer. So there are 3 applications within Foresight: failure indicator, leak response, and ground truth. Failure indicator is specifically for burst prediction and investment planning. So as we were discussing slightly earlier in the interview, it's that kind of really targeted pipe replacement in order to deliver the most significant reductions in service interruption. With leak response, we're reducing the time to find and fix by essentially delivering an in-field operational tool for the leakage technicians to be able to find the leaks of value within a given DMA quicker. And then with ground truth, that's the one which requires a dedicated hole opening in order to install the sensors, because that's where the economic sense or the economic case for doing that actually makes sense. It's only suitable for the most critical or highest consequence of failure assets. So we're working across all of those 3 products, depending on which customer we're speaking to.
Okay, and in terms of, I mean, again, you explained the benefit like data-wise, but from Kevin's perspective, I mean, you obviously, as you say, the pipes is you kind of live and breathe pipes, so you'll be aware of how much, shall we say, potential pain or actual pain it causes water companies. So just your thoughts, I suppose, as to what you hope or you believe will, what the benefits will be from your perspective in terms of better pipe management, if that's the right expression.
Yeah, I think for me there's a win-win all round. I think the reality is the challenge is quite a big scale challenge. If you think of literally the tens or hundreds of thousands of kilometres of pipe that exist within a sort of particular water company's geography, it's quite immense. And I think what you tend to find is if I did it from a utility company point of view, if you're installing new pipe, there's an opportunity there to get the equipment in the ground from the get-go. So why wouldn't you? It'll be relatively cost effective and it's there. Retrospectively, you mentioned around digging around good pipes. I think every water company would have challenging mains where for some reason or other they won't necessarily be able to replace them straight away. That might be because of access issues. It might be because of challenges around outages, in terms of having people off supply. So be able to dig down in areas and actually apply this technology retrospectively is quite useful because, again, you can still get the prediction of failure before it happens. So you can still proactively manage and stop that disruption to customers. So I think from a water company lens, less customer interaction, less customer disruption, that's good, that's positive. You've got more reliability in your asset because actually you're finding out about problems in a proactive way, in a predictable way, as opposed to responding to a phone call or, customers being off water and then having to deal with that. That saves money, saves reputational risk as well. It saves customer dissatisfaction. So there's all those there. If you play that in then to a Network Plus point of view, we can be more proactive. That means we can deliver our service for less cost. So we're delivering better value to our customers, being the water companies. We can be more planned and deliberate in what we do as well, because a lot of the cost is a reactivity. It's the responding at 3 o'clock in the morning or working 24/7, and it's you've got to make sure you've got the right people available. You've got to make sure you've got the right people who've got the capacity to do it. They haven't just finished a long shift in work. You've got more ability to manage safety properly. So you're putting your people in a much more planned environment, which has got to be better than reacting to the unknown. So there's all those the benefits, being customer, being cost, being just personal well-being and safety. So for me, it's a win-win all round. And I think if you look at other sectors, it's there. You wouldn't, all right, things go wrong from time to time, but this is very much around turning what has been a very much a repair and maintenance sort of culture and environment for decades, much more to a maintain and repair when things will and do fail, but it should be a lower volume and it's a much more proactive service offering, which can only be a good thing for everybody involved.
So I guess that sort of begs the question, I suppose, how ready is the water industry? I know everyone talks about smart water and the digitization, but from both your perspectives, how ready do you think the water industry is to embrace the world of AI and advanced analytics? Is it a bit of a still some education persuading needed, or are they all just saying, yes, this is fantastic, bring it on? Or just how do you find that, if you like?
I think it varies, speaking candidly. I think all these companies are under huge pressure from an environmental perspective, from a financial and a commercial perspective, in the sense of, whilst the investment in the UK has never been as great, what people may be not realising is actually to run the day-to-day operation, there's less money every AMP cycle. So there's constant pressure on cost. I guess out of necessity, that will drive the need to innovate and do things differently. So I think even where people may be not as familiar with some of the technology or AI, etc., technology is progressing that quickly that people have got to grasp it, and actually it can be a big enabler to achieving cost savings and efficiency and making sure that services are being delivered at an affordable price, i.e. affordable for customers and affordable for the utility companies and supply chains. So I think the next 5 years is going to be a really fascinating 5 years, because I think necessity will drive the need to do things differently. I guess the biggest challenge is, given the just sheer size of the asset base, is how quickly can you deploy some of this technology. So companies like Datatecnics are chomping at the bit, getting around the UK, educating, showing people what the art of the possible is. And it's how do you make that enough of a priority, given the various different things that water companies are contending with, to make sure that they get behind this and see the benefits? Because like anything, you need quick bang for buck, and often what you find is there's been because of the way sometimes regulation is driven, it's very much a shorter term view Short term might be up to 5 years, but unless the payback's there in the short term, you might not necessarily get some of the long-term solutions. And I think this plays a part in the long term as well. So, long-winded way of answering the question, but I think some are adopting the technology quicker than others. That doesn't mean that they're not getting with the agenda and AI, etc. I think, you'll see it in the news. Different companies have got different challenges, and I guess, it's how they prioritise that focus and where we fit in. And I suppose it's the opportunity for us then to support and actually get some of this in for them so that they can see the benefits and actually see the knock-on impact from a cost and a customer service point of view.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point around like how different the cultures are in the utilities, right? Like not everybody is necessarily moving at the same pace, and it's very easy to just scoff at that. But the alternative to it is exactly what Kev said. It's to just be an educator, be a supporter, help these companies understand the landscape and the value that's there. And that's really what we try to do, because obviously we have incredibly strong conviction about the power of these tools. But change in our sector is, perhaps it's very fair to say particularly slow. And I think, I made this point recently, actually, at a conference. I was just sort of saying that I think we sometimes feel quite precious about our assets in water as though they are more critical than healthcare or nuclear or defense assets where innovation lives and thrives and is being delivered. And I don't think that that's a fair characterization. It's understandable, of course, when you are dealing with something as important as water supply, of course. But we can go further. We must go further. As Kev was saying, necessity will drive that. The challenges we face as a society, as a country, are so incredibly severe that we must innovate. We're seeing challenges in terms of the age of our infrastructure now, where 20% of Britain's assets, pipeline assets, are now over 150 years old, increasing burst rates and leakage reduction that's been pretty much flat for over a decade now. So AI is already disrupting our day-to-day lives as humans and as consumers in a non perhaps water utility setting. And by inference, many of the employees inside of water companies are already using things like ChatGPT in their day-to-day lives, right? So AI will, I'm sure, at least in some capacity, become business as usual at every utility by the end of this AMP. Of that, I've very strong conviction.
Yeah, and I think you both emphasize the need for innovation to embrace this. And so I guess in finishing, it might be good to understand from both your perspectives whether it's further collaboration between yourselves or just individually how you are going to sort of carry on innovating to help the water industry on this journey, which I suspect they will embrace, whether they all do it at the same pace, but what they need to do. So please tell me what you can. Obviously, you're not going to give away any secrets, but a general direction of travel, whatever you can share would be great. So.
I think if I kick us off, so Alan, you can sort of bring it home as it were. But I think for me, there's a lot of opportunity, and I think if we look at just the way technology is moving, in particular in AI, I think we all employ a lot of people, and in many respects, it's still quite a manual and transactional sector. We're reliant on individuals, the water companies and utility companies own assets, but ultimately they are reliant on individuals to run those assets and still make investment decisions. And I think the role of technology and AI in terms of predicting where failure is going to occur operationally is going to be really, really important across all ranges of assets. But I think it goes beyond that as well. I think when you look at some of the opportunity around just how we deal with customers, people can pick up the phone now. You don't have to talk to an individual anymore. You can talk to an AI individual on the phone, and you talk about efficiency and repurposing people and reskilling. There's a lot of back office type activity that arguably, you can replace, and that's not to get rid of people, but the industry faces a massive shortage of resources. So actually using technology in a clever way, which allows you to reskill people and repurpose people to do different types of roles, I think it's going to be really important in terms of making sure the industry is resilient and can deliver some of the big programs that we've seen signed off recently on behalf of Ofwat. I think the technology bit is always going to play a part. I think the reality is, every sector from a utility point of view still digs up the road. We still cause traffic mayhem. We try and be least disruptive as possible, but the asset is under the ground. And I've been doing this role for the best part of 25 years, and we still dig holes the same then as we do now. So actually, what else can we do? How do we minimise that disruption? How do we truly offer that, sort of silent service? And I think all the stuff we've talked around today, if you know it's coming, you're not just reacting to something that's happened today that then causes knock-on impacts to traffic, local authorities, etc. If you know that's coming, you can plan, well, when's the best time to do it? When's the most, the least disruptive time to do it? When's the most beneficial time to customers and pedestrians and transport? And it just gets a much better service offering and a much better actual offering to the public as well, just in terms of disruption. Well, I guess, this is, we very much are the logistics in all of this. You're the brains and the tech. So I don't know what your view is.
No, I'm going to flatly reject that characterization. I mean, we've learned so much from Network Plus, and I think that's why we so very much find this relationship is important to us, because it's one thing to build artificial intelligence models and to spend a lot of time with customers understanding their problems as we do, but it's a very different thing to be out in the real world dealing with customers, replacing pipe sections, because the stuff that we do has a very real impact, right? Like it affects every human life. There isn't perhaps anything more important to the day-to-day life of a human being than their ability to touch their water supply. And so when I think about why this partnership is important and where it's going and why that's so exciting to me, I think it's because, the challenges are as great as they are. Water companies are actively wanting and seeking solutions to those challenges, and they want easier access to them as well, because they don't, it's also really hard, right? Like as a small business to go through complex procurement cycles that have been designed for much larger scale entities. For us to be able to work with Network Plus and to be able to offer services through Network Plus and with Network Plus, it's just a much more convenient method for procurement for those water utilities who want to, rapidly adopt and then scale those technologies. So I think making procurement easier is an absolutely essential component of why this relationship is key. And then in terms of the innovation that we can deliver, it's just going to be of much higher quality and much more informed by the knowledge that we get from this relationship, and in working with Network Plus to understand what their customers' pain points are, and having that sort of transfer of knowledge, if you like. So I'm sure there's going to be a huge amount of value that comes to the UK utility sector as a result of this relationship.
Okay, been brilliant to chat to you both, and some really great insights into what's going on in the water sector and the work that you are doing in partnership. So Suhayl and Kevin, really appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Okay.